the computer. Yes. Okay. So here we go. And I would very much like to introduce a trio. We've got 3 people. We've done singles, we've done doubles, and now we've got trios. So I really am so thrilled. Our committee members, Peter Gamwell, Stan Baines, and Jacqueline Lawrence are here to share their thoughts and ideas on reimagining the cultures. So here we go. Take it away. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexis, and good evening, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here on behalf of myself and Stan and Jackie. And first of all, we hope that you are all staying healthy and as sane as possible during this very extraordinary period of time. And just one correction, Alexis, you don't often get things wrong, but you got this wrong. This is international. We have representation from the UK and I think Australia. Yes, we do. So anyway.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, thanks. I don't think I was not prepared for this. This is, oh my gosh. Okay, so if you happen to have a few seconds in this, you know what would be really great in our chat is please do say hello from wherever you are, because it would be a fantastic opportunity for us to document who's present this evening.
Perfect, yeah.
So just your name and where you're from would be great. Thank you.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about how Jackie and Stan and I, a very unusual trio of people, came to become such good friends and colleagues on our journey. The 3 of us came to know each other about, I'm thinking 16 to 17 years ago. In 2004, I was a superintendent with the Ottawa Carleton District School Board, and I was appointed to the position of responsibility for leadership. And to cut a very, very long 12-year story short, that quickly morphed into a journey to explore the intersections of learning, leadership, creativity, and their impact on individual and organizational health and learning. And Stan and Jackie, along with many, 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 many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of others over the years, played a pivotal role in bringing that journey to life. So this odyssey, as we came to think of it, was launched on the back of an initiative which was called Lead the Way. And it was a series of interconnected happenings over that 12 years. We had 7 or 8 each year, from extremely large conferences, 500 or 600 people, to very small events, perhaps for admin and support staff or parents or volunteers or students or the community. The attendance at all of these events, though, was open, and all had at their center the celebration of learning and the critical, pivotal importance of human creativity in all of its manifestations and across all facets of human experience. And they were all designed really to flip the model of learning from what I think of as a deficit model to strength-based culture. The deep understanding that we need to open spaces of learning, founded on the understanding that within absolutely everybody lies seeds of brilliance, innate creative potential. And our job is to discover, create, and put in place the conditions under which brilliant creative learning flourishes for everyone, whether you're 4 or 104. So at its core, the journey was about reimagining how learning cultures might be redefined, understood, and more importantly, enacted. It was a journey of reimagination, bringing them to life by unleashing the potential in all. At each of the events that featured creative initiatives from schools, classrooms, community, and over the 12 years, thousands and thousands of these remarkable and unique creative initiatives were displayed. Rather than describing these here, Alexis is actually going to post links to several of the videos that we took throughout that 12 years, which will take you on a journey inside how that came to life. One of these central goals was to embrace and live inclusivity. So the events were multicultural in nature, embraced our Aboriginal partners and communities, and involved all employee groups and community members. This diversity unleashed a very different type of conversation, and the focus on creativity at the district level gave permission for schools to do something that they really have not been allowed to do through the education reforms. And that was to experiment, to try different things, and to fail. For teachers, for custodians, for volunteers and communities, over the years, I have to tell you, this impacted deeply on the learning culture. In many ways, really awakened it and transformed the lives of many adults and children alike. I'm going to be uncharacteristically brief because we want to get to you. So first of all, I think I'll turn it over. Stan, you bring a very different lens and perspective to this journey. Would you like to just give a glimpse into your story?
So one of the things for many of you that work in large organizations is you can sometimes experience a lot of disconnect in the many departments that you may work in, both, like I'm in education as well. And part of my job is I deal with custodial staff. So we have a very big disconnect with the remainder of the school board in many instances, simply because of the hours we work and things like that. But what this journey helped me do, and helped a lot of my staff who were part of this, was to actually be connected with people who were otherwise just a name on an email or a memo. So it kind of really broadened our perspectives through some of the events that we did. We were connected with outside companies, and we were connected with many different angles and aspects, not just of our education field, but of the world, right? It gave some of my staff a very big opportunity, including myself, to be able to connect with people, to be able to broaden our own perspectives and teach us to learn to work well outside of our box. Like, we had many of our custodial staff who were stepping up, doing morning announcements in some instances. I was one of those people. We were able to participate in activities that we generally wouldn't be able to do because we were that fringe edge of the board. Well, this included library techs, EAs, ECEs, like every part to make the learning for everyone, not just the students, a better journey, right? So we had a really good opportunity within that, just like we do here with this, to be able to share ideas and to be able to spotlight key things or key ways of thinking, to be able to bring it to a place that we could actually put some of that into action. So I felt that that was a very good opportunity, which is very much what led me to being part of this.
A very critical part of it. And Stan, if I remember rightly, you ran the morning radio station, did you not, at one of the schools?
I did, right? The principal caught the attention that I could speak both English and French. So, as I was making fun of somebody one morning, they're like, "Oh, you think you can do this better?" Well, yes, I could, right?
Oh dear. Jackie, you want to speak for a few minutes on the lens that you bring to this?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse that I met you, Peter, but I would say that the joy of the Lead the Way journey for me was that it gave staff and students permission to explore, to listen, and to respect different ways of knowing, thinking, and being, which are informed in large part by individual and intersecting identities and lived experiences such as gender, race, ethnicity, religion, etc. And individually or collectively, these experiences provide unique access to creative and innovative ways to live life and to contribute to society of the world. One of my favorite quotes is from Canadian anthropologist Wade Davis when he says, "The world in which you were born is just one model of reality. Other cultures are not failed attempts at being you. They are unique manifestations of the human spirit." And so on the Lead the Way journey, by making room for diverse voices and experiences, we were able to demonstrate the essential and perhaps synergistic relationship between diversity and creativity. Specifically, that creativity thrives on different voices and perspectives and ways to view a situation at hand. I mean, essentially problem solving, essentially listening for another way to combine elements to create something new. So this really just offered people a way to explore and to experiment. But, one of the things I think we tend to forget is that schools are a microcosm of society. So all the things that society is trying to address also shows up in our classrooms and our schools. And I would say that if we track it, we can see that since the latter part of the 20th century, schools have increasingly become the first point of contact for those who did, and for those who do, and for those who do not have social, economic, or political access due to privilege based on sex, race, gender, etc. So schools are a really unique environment because they create this great incubator to explore our curiosity and our fears about each other, and to generate opportunities to learn about, learn with, and learn from each other. And you may have noticed that all the areas I listed earlier about different ways of knowing, thinking, and being are very much aligned with subject areas that most of us were conditioned not to talk about in polite conversation, and until most recently not taught in schools. So there's this whole notion, I think, that complexity, when we are out of our comfort, complexity takes, is it invites us to journey into this mystery that we call life. And it invites us to listen for and from what we know, to step out of our comfort zone, to become present to what we don't know. And this may include stepping into spaces of fear, as I said earlier, but it may also take us further to discover what we don't know that we don't know. And I call this a sweet spot moment, because this is a learning zone. This is where true learning happens. This is where curiosity happens. And this is where the potential and the possibility to accelerate growth, I think, is really exciting. And I'll just stop there for now.
Jackie, once again, you do have a way with words. And I wish you were this nice with me when we were in one-on-one conversation. Rarely happens.
I'm going to have to send you a bill for that.
I'm going to state a case right now. I think that the education system is upside down. I think it's been upside down for many, many years, and I think it's getting worse, not better. And what I mean by that is when an organization places its priorities in hierarchical order over the priorities of individuals and groups within it, that manifests itself in policies, processes, procedures that, if you know better, you might think have been created to take the natural wonder and creativity that lie within people and sort of beat it senseless every day. There is amongst us here tonight somebody who worked right through the Lead the Way for 12 years and chose to reimagine her own teaching. It's Rebecca Chambers. She's right there. No textbooks, no exams, none of that. Her classroom is organized chaos when the kids are there, but they're usually out in the community because she makes them into change makers. And they have celebrations of learning at the end of every term. She lets them free on themselves and on the world. The very first one I went to, and I've been following Rebecca now for how long, Rebecca? Maybe 6 years, I would think. And I've got many, many, many videos. The first video I did is this young lady. It's worth 2 minutes of your time. This is why we're upside down. This is one person's story, and then the question will start.
Can't hear it.
Can't hear it.
Go back and reshare and click up for computer sound.
Here, I've got it. Sorry, I was on mute. That was my folly. Here, try. Let's see if we can start this again. Just one more time.
Okay.
1 more second. Sorry, everybody. It was all set up to go so
quickly. I clicked that. Yeah, it was brilliant. Let's try this again.
My second class with her. Okay. So
No, it's not working. No.
Sorry, everybody.
No, that's okay. So
I'm gonna put it into the chat and people can just access.
yeah, that's right. Yes, yes. Well, there goes my business case for change. So what we will do is we will put that into the chat. It is a very profoundly poignant video. And in fact, the next book I'm writing there will be an entire chapter devoted to this young lady's life and another one to Rebecca's work. But the point is, it's not just this one, which was originally a sad story, but now a wonderful story. But there are thousands and thousands of Rebeccas in this world. And we need to do some significant rethinking and reimagining. So I now put the question to the floor on behalf of my colleagues, Stan and Jacqueline. What are your thoughts? How can we reimagine cultures of learning in this age of complexity?
I see Andrew, why don't you head us off?
I think that, and for those of you, most of you don't know me, I'm a retired principal, and I've continued to do some work in schools in various capacities, both as a principal and with restorative justice. And I find myself thinking about a question related to this quite often. And I think one of the keys, I will speak sort of from the teaching perspective, is first and foremost, I think teachers need to see themselves as learners. And I'm reminded quite often of something an acquaintance of mine said one day when we were having a philosophical chat about learning. And he summed it up as know your stuff and know who you're stuffing. And he was being a bit glib. But I think also I've thought about that quote many times. And I think it still reminds me that all too often we see learning as something we do to people. And I think until the people in education, the adults, see themselves first and foremost as learners, we're going to have problems turning things upside down, Peter.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. By the way, I meant to mention this. There's somebody else in our midst here. Whenever I give a presentation, I only have one thing on people's desks, and that's a piece of cardstock and a pencil, and I ask them to create their own wonder walls as we're going through. What ideas make you curious? What do you want to challenge? What assumptions do you want to challenge? And where do you want to collide? And then do it in any way you want to. And we have here a professional artist who's also a principal and the lead singer in my rock band, Rich King. He is doodling as we speak, and hopefully he will show us that at the end. Couldn't agree more. Brilliant point, Andrew. Anybody else?
We've got Chris, and then we've got Robin.
Hi.
Chris.
Thanks for the floor for a moment. How's it going, Pete? It's been a while.
It's going well. Been a while.
Yes, I'm just up here now in the Canadian Arctic, so it's a minor miracle that this is a fluid conversation and you can hear me now rather than 3 minutes from now because of the satellite connection. So thank you for an opportunity. My main thing right now is that this COVID pandemic has actually been a beacon of hope for learning. And what I mean is that stuff like Zoom applications and online learning, although initially a challenge, is opening up opportunities for us to reallocate our budgets. Like traveling and Zooming around in planes used to be a way that we would gather for our conferences and such. But in my experience as a program coordinator for training programs here in the Kikitani region, and that's an indigenous organization, I'm able to cut out some of the budget that I used to spend on those kind of meetings and put it back into the programming. So right now, instead of sending people down to Morrisburg for heavy equipment operator training, I'm going to see if I can access the money and training their communities. Now, logistically, that's crazy for a crazy amount of money that is going to need to be spent. Because every time you increase 10 degrees of latitude up here, you add 20, 30% to your budget. So that's the logistically, it's and monetarily, it's a big challenge. But I just wanted to put that out there that we can recirculate those budget dollars. You know, we don't get travel and schmooze as much as we used to, but I think that it's paving the way forward for us to reinvent how we deliver our curriculums and our courses.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, you're
That's
welcome.
great.
Thank you.
Robin.
Hi. I was trying to say to myself, just listen tonight, just sit back and listen, but this is my field of passion and interest, so I can't help but jump in. I work in schools. I've worked in schools for 20 years and primarily as a classroom teacher, but of the last few years, I work with teachers in 12 schools and very highly diverse environments in Halifax area. And learners through and through. Humans are learners through and through. We can't help it, but we aren't always learning things that are good for us or good for our students. And so, you know, the comment about our hierarchical system is my primary observation of what causes the challenges we face in many ways. The school systems are intensely hierarchical. Mm-hmm. And all the way right down to the student. It's just this enormous pressure from the top down. And it's, I think, a big piece of the problem. The lack of trust in the professionals, the lack of trust in students, the lack of trust in the parents of our students. There's so much fear and anxiety and pressure that it prevents real creativity. You cannot be creative when you're afraid.
No.
Fear is the absolute worst enemy of creativity. And if my students are afraid of my power over them, they don't trust me to learn. If I'm afraid of my administrators' power over me, I'm too afraid to take risks and try new things. And so if I could shift something in the education system, I would shift the power structures. And I've seen what those power structures can do to teachers of color. I've seen what those power structures can do to the teachers who work the hardest and who are the most passionate, and it's not a positive thing. But having been a teacher in a classroom, I know the power of trust and building positive relationships and what it can do and what it's capable of doing. And I would like to see those power structures in schools practice what they preach, genuinely. And that's my 2 cents.
Robin, can we connect after this? I find there's so much there I'd like to, in actual fact, one section I'm writing at the moment, it's on 3 parameters of hierarchy that paralyze the system. And one is leadership, one is understandings and definitions of learning, and the other one is how we've defined creativity, all of which cement the entire thing into a hierarchy. I could not agree more. I'd love to talk to you further on that.
Absolutely.
We've got Matthew, Jane, and then Jennifer.
Hello, I wanted to, there's something Robin said that stuck in my head there, because I'm often confronted with this power imbalance within the system. But I see it reinforced every day in classrooms of colleagues of mine, not in my department necessarily, but like across the board. And I have, I'm in Ontario, in Belleville, Ontario right now, and I have a young daughter in high school right now, and I'm seeing it more and more. Like we have conversations, and I mean, like the reinforcement of all the traditional ways of trying to get at what they know through test after test after test after test after test. And I mean, like I'm a drama teacher and have been for 16 years, and I'm also an English teacher and I teach Indigenous studies, and all of those are very fluid in how I engage with things in my classroom. I mean, I don't leave the drama in the drama classroom. We bring that into the Indigenous studies. We bring that into the English classroom. I don't even remember the last time I ran an exam, like an actual exam, because I don't think it's the best way to look at how people understand. And, but yet we still have, no matter how much we talk about it, we still have people saying, well, how are you going to quantify that if you don't have an exam? And we really just need to keep pushing people out of that box that they find themselves in around traditional methods of assessment and evaluation and the reporting system. I think we should go with no marks for students, only on the constructive feedback. Like what did you do really well, and what do you need to do to build on that? And then with that, there's real learning there happening together in a discussion. You can have discussions about that. But once you put a mark to things, it becomes just a number, and we become obsessed with that number. I talked about multiple things. I was all over the place. My apologies.
Great. That's great. This is exactly what this is for. It is about letting our imagination and our creativity have space to be able to go in multiple directions. And I think that we should be encouraging that in our own thought processes as we're even thinking on what people are saying. I've got Jane next, please.
Hi everybody. I'm from I'm overseas, dialing in from Scotland. So thank you for having me, and it's great to be here. I'm really interested, and it's been fresh on my mind this week around this idea of power. And I listened to a Brene Brown podcast where she interviewed Joe Biden this week. Well, it was a while ago, but she talked about can't talk about leadership without talking about power, and how certainly we talk a lot over here about perceived leadership and perceived power as the people at the top with who have the ability to make things happen, and in a classroom it's the teacher with the power because I've got the knowledge and I'm here to tell you everything I know. But if you can just shift that dynamic a bit and try and see those, Matthew, I really liked what you were saying in terms of trying to, we're here, we're equals, we're here to learn together, and how can we kind of explore a subject, or who's in, tell me something that you're interested about today, and let's all explore that and maybe just shift that power balance. And I think there's something really for me looking, my research is around leadership and change, and really looking at how we can shift that belief that we all have the ability to create change, even if we don't perceive ourselves to have that power in the traditional sense. And I think that kind of echoes for me in that kind of traditional teacher standing up at the front of the classroom and I'm here to pass or fail you and assess you. But the great stuff that I see is where actually it's, look, we're in this together, and actually you might know something I don't, because now if you're on with tech, at the click of a button and a search of Google, we can find out anything, but it's what you do with it then that matters. So thank you for allowing me to speak and welcoming me.
That's fantastic. Thank you for joining us. We've got Jennifer next as a good lineup of people. I will get to you all, but we've got Jennifer next.
Hi, thank you for letting me have the floor. I am the one from Connecticut in America, US. I will start with a deep apology for the last 4 years, but I think in the last couple of weeks we figured that out. Moving in a more positive direction and hope to rejoin the world in a better conversation. But I did want to comment, something that Robin said really sparked something for me I've been kind of dwelling on. I had the opportunity to go to Finland about a year and a half ago and examine their educational system. And I didn't go with a critical juxtaposition in mind. I just wanted to observe and become part of the system. And the thing I noticed most was they don't live in a poverty mindset. And I do realize there's a largely socialist country with a centrist government, which is not what exists for us here in the United States, with a very polarized kind of situation going on. But I did realize that poverty mindset in education has been kind of the decision driver for a lot of us for a long time. And I grew up in poverty, and I saw the effects of that on my parents. They're living paycheck to paycheck, much like local boards of eds run their school systems in the United States. And in our wealthier districts, we find that they don't have the poverty mindset. So they have the comfort to sit back in moments where they're not comfortable making decisions and take time to think these through. Whereas where I live now, which is a distressed community in Connecticut, we are in a very hot place. We don't tend to sit in the discomfort of what's going on and examine it from a critical perspective. We really just want the emergent nature or the heat of the moment to pass as quickly as we can. And we tend to make decisions kind of in a snap way just to get us out of the uncomfortableness, not recognizing that we don't take the time to sit in the discomfort and understand what it is and mellow out and take it apart, that we're going to continue to make very disastrous decisions for children. And for me, systemically, this has such a large impact. And I am a classroom teacher. I'm an English teacher at a local vocational technical high school. And the poverty mindset is just something I see as so pervasive in the United States system, and the way it drives thinking about education and promotes distrust within the system and calls into question the professionalism of teaching and learning, which impacts what happens in a classroom and the morale in a building. And I just think if we're going to look to move something, in the next phase after COVID, when we reinvent and reinstitute something organic, for ourselves, if we wanted a lever to push, I think adopting some kind of funding system or addressing this poverty mindset has got to come at the center of the first conversations. Without the security of knowing that we are trusted, we are funded, not just with money, but also emotionally and psychologically, you know, our buckets are filled, we're really not going to make it very far with our kids. And we're going to continue to model for our children as adults very poor behavior and self-regulation and self-modulation. Oh, thanks. That was fun. So excited to hear what other people have to say. So thank you so much.
Great. That's great. Peter, you're muted. So you want to jump in?
I just want to say this. One of the frustrating things about is that everybody that speaks, every single person that's spoken could be the topic for an hour-long conversation. So, anyway.
So what I'd like to do is actually jump our queue a little bit, because I do think that given that Jacqueline and Stan are both hosting with us, I think it's good to hear. So Stan, I'll let you go first, and then Jacqueline, if you could follow, and then we'll pick up with John just after.
Yeah, I'm going to be brief because I echo what Peter said. What I like about this is that you can tell there's a lot of educators here, but I also know historically from some of the people that have joined us is that we've got some outside of the education field people too. And I think the topic at hand basically is looking at a lot of different things that apply all over the place. So for instance, you know, we're talking about defined leadership in some instances versus simply leaders. Right. So as you look at businesses and corporations out in the outside world, like Google is a shining example, for instance, of listening to almost every part of every employee to go, somebody walking past may have an idea. You're not just limited into the boardroom or the people that are supposed to be the think tank people. So this is where listening to how we're doing, like just look at the Zoom meeting. So all of us have been in a Zoom meeting probably all week doing something, you know, both limited in your house. But here we are doing something where if 2 years ago somebody told you you would be existing this often online remotely, especially at a time where you don't have to, this goes to show that we're not just looking for how do we reinvent the system. Well, the system through, and Chris brought up a good point and I never thought of it, COVID is a terrible thing that's happened, but what it's done is it's allowed us to connect in ways that we would have been planning to do several years down the road. Yet here we are now, neck deep in it, and now finding new and better ways to keep doing this. So as we're looking at how do we, sometimes it's the most obscure outside influence that can pop in there that actually starts to execute that change and thrusts you right into it and keeps us going. So I just wanted to add that yeah, like we're not only just in education, but when you look at how the world has been flipping over, the companies that are going to do the best and the businesses that are going to do the best, especially during these trying times, are the ones that are going to be thinking from the ground up, no longer from the top down.
You know, Stan, you've started where I wanted to go with this, and this is the way I call it is the gift of COVID. There's some disastrous aspects of COVID, but what COVID has done is COVID has exposed the inequities that are within the education system, the health sector, justice, every single one of our systems. And that's why for me, this is important that we don't keep this at a positional level. This is a systemic and structural issue that we have to talk about. And so when we talk about power differentials, the system was designed to be a power differential. The system was designed for inequities. And so this is the work at hand for us right now, is to really look at the systems and structures that are not working because they're not serving our students, they're not serving our staff, and they're not serving our communities. Moreover, you know, moreover, there is this common thread that I keep hearing. I can't wait for us to go back to normal. And I'm like, please let us not go back to normal, because the way that normal has been defined, it has been dehumanizing, it has been harmful, it has been destructive. And so, you know, this week we celebrated Martin Luther King Day, and one of the quotes that keep coming up from him is, you know, the title of his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos, Our Community. I think we're at a threshold where we're being asked to look at what does community really mean? And whose voices are we listening as we create community? So again, if the structures and the systems are saying only X amount of people based on how you look, where your what your zip code is, you know, what status you have, that's who's making the decision. I will assert that COVID is disrupting all of that. So one of the things that, for example, I've heard over the years from some educators is, well, you know, parents and community folks will not understand what's going on in our classrooms. Guess what COVID has done? COVID has put our classroom in homes. Now, who are partners? If the very parents and the very community folks that we said could not understand the educational process and systems. And now what that has also done is revolutionized the engagement in some ways in terms of questions that parents are asking. I even have some parents who want to get a credit for some of the courses that they're listening to. We have one class that parents are actually showing up for and are bringing their kids to it to say, hey, we need to be in this class tonight. So I think this conversation around structures and systems, we cannot forget that, because that is where the creative potential is. How do we look at generating and personalizing learning in such a way that it's truly meaningful, relevant, and advances the critical thinking skills of our students, so that when they leave our doors, they're leaving with a sense of knowing fully and embracing totally who they are and what contributions they can give to the world and gift to the world. So we've got to really dive deep into the structural systems for me.
I've got John, David, and then 958-8942, and then Anne. So we've got 4 in the queue. So John and then David.
All right, thanks. I'm not sure how I got an invite to this, but it's really wonderful. I'm in Ottawa, Canada, and I spent about 20 years working as a futurist for the Canadian Forces in an HR function. Military organizations often spend more than any other organization on the training and development of their folks, but it's a hierarchical organization. So I have a few things I'd like to just sort of mention. When I met General Dallaire, I understood what a leader of men was. And I think there's a place for leader, but I think the leadership meme actually activates hierarchy. The school system is a Victorian organization designed to create cogs that will fit in the machine. The 21st century requires collective intelligence. No single person, no single organization, no single country can solve the problems that we are faced. So class should be about collective intelligence. The digital environment is full of content. So we need these laboratories where people come together and solve problems together. And they should be graded or judged as a collective. So, but the world is changing. And so partly this, what is the school system supposed to serve? So I think we're at this, the COVID, climate change, Trump as this critical thing. And so key to changing the school is changing our business models. I think we have to displace leadership. A complex system requires catalysts, requires activators, requires assemblers, requires a whole host of roles, diversity of roles, and ecology creates more roles as more roles appear, right? Because you can combine things and find niche things. So as I retired, I became a co-founder of what we call The Space. It's our mission is apprenticing for creative self-employment for adults on the autism spectrum, right? So there's green screens, they can create YouTube stories, you know, for these. I have a daughter on the autism spectrum. So that's one thing. So we have to realize that there's more business models that can be created, then private sector and government, right? We need citizens, right? Not just leaders, because a leader means followers. We need citizens. And so by creating collective intelligence, you're creating citizens. Now, in an industrial economy, the employment framework serves to keep citizens disciplined. Oh, I better stay in the lines or I'll get fired. And there's a role for that, right? When you learn to solve problems together, the group serves to create a citizens, which disciplines us because we have to figure out a way to work together. And that's a positive, well, everything can be positive or negative. There's nothing that can be weaponized, and there's no weapon that can't serve a good purpose, right? So I don't want to take up too much time. There's one more point, I think, because education is so and we live in this austerity framework. I've just recently come, because as a researcher looking at the future and looking at the digital environment and looking at the future of identity, I realized there's this new economic paradigm that's arising. It's called modern monetary theory. There's a great book called The Deficit Myth, written by Stephanie Kelton, who was Barack Obama's chief economist on his economic panel, and she was Bernie Sanders' chief economist. The sovereign country with its own currency can never run out of money. It can run out of people, it can run out of oil, it can run out of trees. So this is really important as citizens to be able to approach our politicians and renegotiate how we fund community, how we fund lifelong learning, how we fund the infrastructure that's necessary for the 21st century. And that is more than leadership, that's citizenry, right? So, okay, so there's, everybody has said so many things and there's so much to talk about, but I thought that.
This is really great. Thank you, John. And I'm gonna pass it over to David. And we've got about 15 minutes left. I know, don't feel the pressure, but just putting it on our radar.
Okay, well, this is an extremely complex problem that needs to be attacked at different levels. My thoughts as a retired teacher, and I'm involved with CNIC in Vancouver. I live in Victoria. We just had this discussion the other day, and for me, it's a educational, philosophical problem. Right at the foundations, what I see teachers coming out is the pedagogies that are being asked to include or use in schools are largely based on a really flawed model around Piaget and Mead and Dewey, and I really think it's time that we get rid of the ghost of Piaget in our teaching faculties and start to move towards a more Vygotskian type of model, because that model does include what's been said before about people that all of us in the school system, students, teachers, janitors, principals, and so forth, we're all active agents, and we need to recognize that part. But that that we have an approach that is that kind of I have stuff and how I'm going to stuff it into them, and keep wondering why after 6 weeks they no longer seem to know the stuff that we've taught, and they're not emotionally engaged in this. And so I think that there are aspects of what Vygotsky talks about, and definitely Kieran Egan. I would recommend his book, The Future of Education, where he talks about switching it to a more what he calls imaginative education, which is really about getting learners engaged, getting teachers engaged, getting all school staff brought together, more an interdisciplinary approach. But getting students who, really want to find out about things, that everything is wonderful and it is worth studying, and that they will find something that they will want to have a lifelong connection to. So my little contribution here is that I really think that in our faculties of education, they seem to be the last bastion of Piaget, and we need to be really critical about a lot of these pedagogies that are out there that we're trying to incorporate into our schools. We've had 120 years of doing public schools, and we're still talking about the problem of teaching and learning. So maybe we need to get right down to the basic philosophical trends that are in our approaches to teaching, and change to ones that, like I've suggested. That's my rant. So.
Great, thank you, David. I'm heading over to Marilyn.
Good evening. Sorry, I was having trouble changing my number there. My name is Marilyn. I think Jacqueline said at the beginning really struck me, and it's discover what you don't know that you didn't know. I think it's something like that. And I think we've talked a lot tonight about like decentralizing and
Marilyn, I'm gonna have to hold off. Your audio is very choppy. We can't quite hear you very well. I'm wondering if that, just for sake of time, it's very choppy. I'm just wondering, for the sake of time, if you don't mind putting some of your thoughts into the chat, that would be really helpful. And then if things just very broken.
It's all good.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Anne. Anne, if you can let us know your thoughts, that would be.
Hi, thank you. I'm not a teacher. I've got 3 kids who've gone through the education system in Ottawa, Ontario, and have been very involved as a parent in many aspects. And that's how I got to know Peter Gamwell and Jackie. And I'm listening to a lot of educators here, and the title of the session today is Reimagining Cultures of Learning. And the school system, the formal school system, is part of learning, but it's only a part of it for our kids. Well, for everybody. We talk about teachers being learners. We talk about everybody being learners. Kids are learners from the day that they're born. And they say that parents are the first teacher and most important teacher, whatever they say, for kids, right? And I think when we're talking about cultures of learning, and we're talking about reimagining it and turning it on its head, we need to be thinking about the role that school plays, the role that family plays, the role that the community plays in education. School is only a part of the education, of the learning for kids. And I think that's a really, really important thing. And I just wanted to share that. And I've got a little story, personal story from when my kids were young and they were all at school, and we were having some renovations done. We're having an addition done to our house. And on the day that they came, they dug out the hole, and every day the kids would come home from school and see what was being done. And on the day that they were pouring the cement, and they bring the big truck in, and they've got the hose coming out of it, and they're pouring the cement. My husband rushes over to the school, picks up the kids, pulls them all out of school, and brings them home to see what was happening when their house was being built. Because that is a piece of education that they can't get at school, and they can only get at a specific time, and that was then. And I think that sort of thing is a really, really important aspect when we're talking about reimagining the culture of learning. That's all. That's my story.
That's fantastic, Anne. We're just heading into our last 5 minutes. So I just want to ask our hosts, our topic hosts, Peter, Stan, and Jacqueline, give me like your 1 minute summation or what's sparking you or inspiring you about what you're hearing tonight. Where is your head right now in 1 minute or less?
Stan, Jackie, who wants to go first?
I will.
Go, Stan.
No, Jackie, you go ahead.
No, I'm excited because I think this is the collective learning and the collective conversations that are important that should be had in different levels. I've been working with a group of about 150 educators for the last while who've been asking themselves and challenging themselves, what hill am I willing to climb to serve my students? And it reminds me, today I was listening to Amanda Goran's poem, and the last line of it for me gives me a lot of hope in terms of when she says, the new dawn blooms as we free it, for there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave to be it. And I think that is the challenge in front of us, is in educators, as system leaders or educators, is are we brave enough to step into the change that's being called for?
Stan, thank you, Jackie.
I just simply want to add that one of the things, and we said it at the beginning, is we never have enough time. And this discussion just right here can branch out into so many different things. So I want you all to be able to walk away from this, continue to think about this. And if this is your first time joining us, this is what it's like every time. So I want to encourage you to keep coming back, because a lot of the topics continue to keep flowing. We need to really be reimagining how we're going to be doing business. And it starts with the conversation. So
I guess my 30 seconds is this. I'm going away with far many questions than I came in with. And I'm just so appreciative that people share so honestly and from such different perspectives. This has now become my life's work and thinking. And so if you would like to reach out to me on Twitter, I think I'm at petergamwell.com. That's not Twitter, at Peter Gamwell, or peter@petergamwell.com is my email. I would love to stay connected, and thank you very much is all I can say.
I just want to throw in one more thing. So if you want to kind of see what journey that we were on within the school board, Alexis is going to share a report. It's called Unleashing Potential, Harnessing Possibility, an Odyssey of Creativity, Imagination, and Critical Thinking. And this tells the story of our first kind of 10 years. It reveals the findings that we did as a school board over 2.5 years or so. And we asked the question, what are the conditions under which creative and healthy individuals and organizations flourish? Right. So it's a really good read for you to take the time to kind of see what we came up with. And Alexis will also be sharing some videos within the chat too, that'll give you a little bit of an idea as to what we were up to. So if you have a moment, please take a look.
5 more
Thanks
seconds.
so much for coming and being a part of this conversation. It's just very enriching and enlivening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Rich King has been doodling. Rich, where are you? Would you be willing to show us what you've got so far, Rich? Where are you? Is he gone?
Oh, he's there. Can he be spotlighted somehow?
You would have to do it, pin your video. Oh, it's fantastic. So
where are you, Rich?
You got to go over one page. We've got an incredible.
Oh wow!
Here.
Oh wow!
So what I would ask, Rich, if you can, is to take a snapshot, a photo, and send it to us. And that's fantastic. That's really exciting. Wow. That's okay. So, and the reason why we keep it within this 1 hour is we really want to get the ideas going and feel like you have more to say, because in doing that, that is how we're going to start to really create action. So it is one thing to come together and have the conversations. It's another to actually move these ideas forward. And even if those are just in small ways, or how they reflect in the work that you are doing and who you're working with, it's that we really want to be able to initiate. So that's the goal of the network, is to initiate the ideas, to create movement in action, that we're not just sort of, you get your 1 hour and now it's time for us to keep it going. I do want to highlight that we've got our next one coming up We've got Sandeep Glover will be hosting. This will be in February, the third Thursday of February. Right now, her hope is to discuss the conditions that cultivate imagination and creativity. So integrating storytelling, but how do we cultivate this idea of imagination and creativity, and what do we need to be able to grow those ideas and create those spaces? So we'll have more information for you on that. Please continue to expand this network. Please continue to invite those individuals that you think would benefit from this kind of provocation, conversation, collaboration, collective thinking, because clearly, globally, I would even say, we're talking the same things, and it is a time of change, and it is a time to really look at what our next steps are as we move forward further into the 21st century. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. We will see you back here in February, and like I said, there will be the video, and we will have the chat. So I want to thank so much Peter, Stan, and Jacqueline for your provocation this evening. We could go for hours, but our goal is to try to get the action going. Yeah. So this is so great. Thank you so much.
Just one more thing. Sadly, the contingent from Australia just in.
Sorry, the Aussies were late. I apologise, but I'll catch up on what you were discussing. So just commend you all on all the work you do, and I'm looking forward to future opportunity.
Thanks, Gail.
Great. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you in February.
Good night.
Bye.